Poštovane gledateljice, poštovani gledatelji, dobra večer i dobrodošli u još jednu cenzuru u produkciji udruge Cenzura plus. Večeras u cenzuri razgovaramo o ulasku Hrvatske u Europsku uniju i predstojećem referendumu, a o ovoj temi ćemo razgovarati s našim posebnim gostom. S nama je u studiju večeras gospodin Vandoren, šef delegacije Europske unije u Hrvatskoj. Your Excellency, welcome to Cenzura. I'm very glad to see you here.
Hvala lijepa. I'm glad to be here in Split again.
Okay. Gospodine Vandoren, molim vas, možete li objasniti zapravo, evo, cijeli proces pregovaranja Hrvatske je završen prošle godine i trajao je iznimno dugo, više od 6 godina. Međutim, evo, u ovom trenutku nalazimo se ispred nas je zapravo referendum na kojem trebamo odlučiti jesmo li za pridruživanje Europskoj uniji, hoće li Hrvatska postati članica Europske unije ili možda neće. Možemo li kratko na samom početku ove emisije objasniti što je to Europska unija danas, kakva je njena uloga u međunarodnoj globalnoj zajednici?
Thank you very much for this very basic question. And I think it's very much appropriate to ask this question because the European Union of today looks very different from how, at the time, 50 years ago, the European community looked like. As you know, we started more than 50 years ago amongst 6 member states, shortly after the World War, the Second World War, basically to create the conditions to maintain peace and stability in Europe, as I said, in the then European community. And luckily, we have been successful by maintaining peace and stability. And over all these years, we have expanded, we have enlarged several times. And this is why this is such a relevant question, because now the European Union is facing the new enlargement, possibly, and hopefully, with the accession of Croatia. So, as you know, Croatia, having concluded the accession negotiations with the European Union, is heading to become the 28th member state of the European Union. Croatian language is scheduled to become the 24th language of the European Union. Of course, all this provided, and that's where we are now in the context of the referendum, provided that the citizens of Croatia this Sunday will say, yes, we want to be part of the European Union. We want Croatia to be part of the European Union. Personally, of course, I'm hoping that, first of all, the citizens will vote in great numbers, and that of those who vote, many
yes.
will vote yes. I do believe that that will be the crown in this process from the side of Croatia, and then ultimately, if also the ratification in the member states takes place successfully, and there is no reason that we should doubt about this, then by 1st of July 2013, Croatia will be there where it belongs.
Ja ću se za trenutak vratiti na trenutnu situaciju u Europskoj uniji. Je li se u ovom trenutku, je li se osjeća to jedinstvo i zajedništvo? Je li zapravo ideja Europske unije još uvijek aktuelna? Je li projekt prisutan u svim zemljama i svim članicama podjednako?
The idea of a united Europe, of a European Union, has been very strong in the member states of the European Union. But of course, there are those who believe that we should be very cautious and further progress only with certain measurement. Because many people think, many citizens think that the European Union is a project which is very far away from the citizens of the member states. I do believe that that is not the case, because the European Union has affected many spheres of daily life of the citizens of our member states. And this will be the case also for Croatia. Now, the idea of a united Europe, of a European Union, of course, has also been opposed to by citizens throughout the European Union, which is perfectly normal in a democracy. So I also have no difficulty with Croatian citizens who are questioning the validity of Croatia becoming a member of the European Union. This is democracy. This is what democracy is about.
Recite mi, u ovom trenutku se Europska unija suočava sa dubokom ekonomskom ali i društvenom krizom. Mislite li da politički lideri imaju političku viziju za budućnost Europe i možda imaju strategiju kako razriješiti ovu krizu?
Well, let's be clear about what the current major difficulties are in the European Union. On the one hand, we have in a number of member states, and several of these are part of the so-called Eurozone, have spent too much money in the past, and therefore the sovereign debt, the debt of the government, is far too high in comparison with the means about which these member states dispose. That's bad. In any economy, in any household, you should be careful about the spending. So this is what is being tackled, and the European Union, the member states together with the European institutions have been tackling over the last 18 months. And we have not yet fully sorted out this problem, but you may remember that in December, the leaders of the member states and the European Union institutions agreed to draft a new treaty in order to provide for new mechanisms, for new measures in order to overcome this problem. Good work, good progress has been made, and the expectation is that the political leaders probably at the end of January will endorse the work done on this treaty in order to be able to sign this treaty on the 1st of March. However, this is only one of the issues I wanted to talk about.
But u ovom trenutku zapravo čini se da su politički lideri usmjereni isključivo na rješavanje ekonomskih problema eurozone. Znači na spašavanje banaka, financijskih institucija i tržišta, dakle svih onih koji su zapravo prouzročili ovu krizu. Što je sa drugom, što je sa dubokom društvenom krizom koja sigurno postoji u zemljama Europske unije?
First of all, indeed, it is important in order to overcome these difficulties in the European Union that leadership is being provided. And certainly you have watched and witnessed this as well. the German Chancellor and the French President have taken a strong lead together with the President of the Council, Mr. Van Rompuy, and President of the Commission, Mr. Barroso. They've really been working very hard, and it is important that these two member states and the representatives of the institutions work closely with all the member states, because indeed it is important that all the member states join in this effort. However, for the time being, the United Kingdom has decided to stay out of this draft treaty. This is the right of the United Kingdom. But very rightly so, you have referred to the social crisis, or you can call it a problem of lack of economic growth. I think...
Koji su problemi s kojima se danas suočava Europska unija? Je li to velika nezaposlenost, posebno mladih ljudi, socijalna nesigurnost na koju se jako žale i recimo jedan svojevrstan pad životnog standarda, koji je još uvijek veći nego u Hrvatskoj?
Yeah, we know that the rate of the economic growth in many of our member states is not high enough in order to create employment for many, in particular young people, who do not have currently a job. That is the main issue, and that is why in the European Union the leaders should not only take austerity measures in order to make the budget more sound, but should also take measures in order to stimulate the economy. This is absolutely indispensable if we want to keep the young generation on board. In one of our member states, I'm thinking of, for instance, Spain, 45% of young people are without job. That's why last summer we have seen a very popular demonstration in many cities in Spain, because, of course, for young people this is not acceptable.
Kako Europska unija, zapravo kako Španjolska može razriješiti recimo taj problem i kako Europska komisija može pomoći u tome?
Well, the European Commission for a number of years has tried to convince the member states that they themselves take measures in order to stimulate employment. The European Commission came with a project which is called Europe 2020. So this is an objective in order to reach a much higher level of employment throughout the society, because Europe wants to be inclusive. Europe does want to avoid that particular parts of the population would be left out of progress. But ultimately, most of the measures to be taken in order to create jobs have to be provided by the governments and, of course, by companies who can indeed create new industries, innovation, new technologies. That's where the growth will have to come from, not from old industries. And I personally believe that this is also true for Croatia, because in Croatia we also have a level of unemployment which is too high. And this will be, in my view, one of the biggest challenges for the new government, to create an environment where more people will be put at work.
Hoće li nam Europska unija u tome pomoći?
Well, of course, the accession of Croatia to the European Union will be beneficial because, for instance, in the future, as of accession, Croatia will be able to benefit from funding from the European Union to a much larger extent than has been the case in this period of the last 10 years prior to accession. And this funding will enable Croatia to further modernize its economy, create new big projects of infrastructure, and of course that means employment.
Nastavit ćemo razgovarati o europskim fondovima, ali u ovom trenutku možda da se vratimo na problem ljudskih prava, tolerancije i nestanka multikulturalizma u starim članicama Europske unije. Što se događa zapravo sa Romima u Francuskoj ili kako, na primjer, stare članice Europske unije se nose sa problemom imigranata iz Sjeverne Afrike?
Thank you for moving on to this other very important subject. Indeed, many citizens have the impression that the European Union is about economics. But Europe is much more than about economics. Europe, the European Union, is about values, about human rights, about democracy, about freedom, about solidarity. Of course, we have been witnessing developments in the Mediterranean area in North Africa over the last 12 months, and the European Union is committed to assist these young democracies to full democracy, and there is a huge opportunity for the European Union to work together with these countries, and therefore it is very important to work with civil society in these countries. The developments in the Mediterranean and the Middle East over the last 12 months has really been a bottom-up development, and that's where the European Union gives its support. In order to come back to the issue of Roma, which is an issue which is not proper to France, but has been prevalent in a number of other countries, including in Croatia, actually. The European Union insists very strongly on avoiding any discrimination in terms of origin of people, and is pleading very strongly for the effective integration of Roma people or other minorities into the society, and therefore it is important to also provide these people, to provide the mechanism so that they can have a job, that they have accommodation, proper accommodation.
Međutim, je li zapravo na dijelu duboka podjela između bogatih članica na sjeveru Europe ili u starih članica u zapadnoj Europi koje su znatno ispred, recimo, novih članica iz istočne Europe, ali i nekih starih koje su na jugu Europe? Je li se Europa na neki način podijelila?
Well, I think that talking about old member states and new member states is no longer appropriate. Why? This is no longer appropriate because the enlargement processes which took place in 2004 and 2007, which brought into the European Union 12 new member states, these processes have been successful. The differences which existed prior to the accession of these 12 member states have been significantly reduced. Let me explain. Why is that so? Because trade between these countries has increased substantially. Investment between the countries or the member states which you call the old member states and the new member states have increased substantially in both directions, and the standards of living have increased substantially. So I think that it is no longer appropriate to talk about old and new member states, and I believe that the enlargement processes have been successful policies of the European Union, and I'm deeply convinced that the current enlargement, in order to include Croatia, will also be a successful experience, provided, of course, the citizens of Croatia want to become part of the European Union, and therefore the accession of Croatia to the European Union can be a win-win situation. In other words, can be a win for the citizens of Croatia and can be a win for the citizens of our current 27 member states.
Evo, sad možemo nastaviti naš razgovor u odnosu na Hrvatsku. Naime, kao što sam već rekla, pregovarački proces je trajao iznimno dugo, 6 godina, mislim čak nešto više od 6 godina. Koliko ste zadovoljni hrvatskim progresom u provedbi ekonomskih i društvenih reformi?
Well, the European Commission last year in June proposed to the member states of the European Union to conclude the negotiations, which, as you said, lasted for more than 6 years, and any negotiation lasts too long for those who are impatient to conclude negotiations. But negotiations always take time, and one cannot say in advance how long a negotiation can or should last. But surely, when last June the European Commission proposed to the Member States to finish the negotiations, the European Commission was deeply convinced, on the basis of facts, on the basis of material provided by the Croatian authorities, that indeed whatever was required in the context of this process was fulfilled. In other words, the Commission, the European Commission, indicated to the Member States that basically we could stop the negotiations, but the Member States said, fine, we agree with you, European Commission, but we believe that in certain areas Croatia should continue to do its homework a little bit, and we ask the European Commission to check, to monitor further progress. And that's where it is indeed true that the reform processes have not yet been fully terminated, but reforms always need to continue, even after the referendum, which hopefully will be positive. Croatia will continue its reforms, and even after accession, hopefully Croatia will continue its reforms.
Stalno je bio problem sa poglavljem 23, znači pravosuđe i temeljna ljudska prava. Prvo ću vas pitati, je li mislite da je u ovom trenutku hrvatsko pravosuđe pripremljeno za ulazak u Europsku uniju i kao takvo prihvatljivo samoj Europskoj uniji?
Well, it is true that the experience of Croatia and the European Union with this famous Chapter 23 has been a very demanding exercise. In the context of Chapter 23, Croatia has been working hard on the reform of the judiciary system, which was badly needed in the interest of the citizens of Croatia. Croatia has been stepping up significantly its efforts in the fight against corruption and organized crime, and Croatia has also been proactive in increasing the protection and respect for human rights. Now, clearly, these three areas are areas where the work is never finished. Also, in our own 27 member states, this is still an ongoing process. But to come back to your question with regard to the reform of the judiciary, good work has been done, but there are still some areas where the reforms need to be continued. And obviously, with regard to the fight against corruption, there we have witnessed over the last, let's say, 2 years, an enormous stepping up of investigations and prosecutions. But we are, in particular, and I'm sure that the citizens of Croatia as well are waiting to see what ultimately the courts will decide, because the processes of fighting corruption are not finished until the judges have decided whether this person was guilty or not. And that is up to the judges, and only up to the judges.
Vi ste sigurno upoznati sa peticijom organizacija civilnog društva koji su upozoravale da neke bitne reforme koje se odnose na upravo ovo poglavlje, znači na vladavinu prava i zaštitu ljudskih prava, još uvijek nisu provedene. Koje od tih zapravo njihovih zahtjeva Europska komisija podržava?
The European Commission highly values the input of civil society in this process of the accession negotiations. My delegation in Zagreb has met a number of times with representatives of civil society, and indeed we have looked carefully, and colleagues of the European Commission in Brussels have looked carefully at a number of recommendations civil society organizations have made in a number of areas, including with regard to the issues covered by Chapter 23. We fully support the input of civil society. We believe that it is important that the authorities, before adopting new legislation, before agreeing on reforms, fundamental reforms fundamental to the Croatian society, that civil society is consulted. And in any society, this is a process. I do believe that the input of civil society is growing in Croatia, but is possibly not yet fully mature. And I believe that, and I hope that the new government will undertake serious efforts in order to pay more attention to the input of civil society organizations. It is important in order to make reforms and new legislations sustainable.
Jeste li podržali njihov zahtjev za osnivanjem parlamentarnog tijela, neovisnog parlamentarnog tijela, koje bi pratilo proces monitoriranja?
You know, whether within Croatia a parliamentary body is set up in order to facilitate this process of dialogue and consultation between authorities and civil society, this is really up to Croatia and to the Croatians to decide. This is one possibility, but I'm sure there are other mechanisms which can be thought about as well. What matters is not the form, but the fact that consultation, dialogue takes place.
Možemo se možda vratiti na cijelu našu ekonomsku situaciju. Što za nas znači otvaranje europskih fondova i kolika sredstva nam stoje na raspolaganju u sljedećem razdoblju?
Well, over the last 10 years, Croatia benefited already from not insignificant amounts of pre-accession funding. The amounts of funding benefited from by Croatia has gone up over the years and is now in the area of 150 or 160 million euros per year. I already indicated earlier on in this conversation that one of the advantages of membership, future membership of Croatia of the European Union, is the possibility to benefit from much more significant funding. So already in 2013, by when hopefully Croatia will become member of the European Union, this amount will be multiplied by approximately 6 times. And then for the future period, the new budget period, which in the European Union will run from 2014 to 2020, this still needs to be negotiated. But clearly, this is an important advantage.
Hoće li se Hrvatska, posrnula ekonomija, jednostavno ne znam kako drugčije nazvati, moći nositi sa konkurencijom na tržištu Europske unije?
Well, here we come to another major advantage, major benefit of the future accession, the possible future accession of Croatia, is Croatia becoming part of this huge single market. This means for the Croatian entrepreneurs to have, I would say, unrestricted access to more than 500 million citizens, customers or consumers. This is a huge opportunity. Now, of course, I often say the market does not come to the entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurs have to go to the market. So it is the challenge, and this is a question of competition of the Croatian entrepreneurs to investigate the markets of our member states, try to find out where their comparative advantage is in order to detect the niche markets where Croatian products can find their place in the shops, their channel, maybe even electronically to the consumers. This is their responsibility, this is their challenge.
Jesmo li to mogli možda i do sada? A iskustvo govori da nismo iskoristili sve one otvorene mogućnosti koje je Europska unija nudila.
The Croatian market indeed is already to a very large extent integrated in this single market of more than 500 million customers. But the full integration will come on the day of accession. So there is still this extra challenge which Croatian entrepreneurs should undertake. And of course, by realizing this full integration of the market on both sides, 27 plus 1, of course, competitors will also come here. So the Croatian entrepreneurs also have to defend their market position on their home market.
Što to znači, recimo, u tom kontekstu, možemo na dva primjera za našu poljoprivredu, možemo reći za poljoprivredu i za brodogradnju. Što će za njih značiti ulazak Hrvatske u Europsku uniju?
With regard to shipyards, which certainly is a sensitive issue in your city, in Split, not only in Split, but also in Split. Here, this is an important issue where the work is not finished. And from the European Union side, we are waiting for a report from the Croatian authorities demonstrating further progress made since last October. Now, what are we waiting for? And it is very clear because it is written in the draft, in the accession treaty. It's no longer a draft because it's signed. In the accession treaty, it is foreseen on the basis of mutual agreement between all the EU member states and Croatia that the shipyards, a number of shipyards, not all of them, but the major ones, which have had difficulties over the last few years and which have benefited from state aid for a number of years, for large quantities of money, that this state aid has to be terminated, that these shipyards have to be reorganized, and these plans have been agreed upon. But Croatia had opted for doing this reorganization of the shipyards through privatization. The privatization contracts have not yet been signed.
Je li jedino kroz privatizaciju ili možda dolaze i neki drugi oblici?
So the Croatian authorities had decided to restructure the shipyards industry through privatization, which is a good way of doing it. And luckily, through the tendering procedures, a number of companies have offered bids, but these bids, these offers still need to be translated in privatization contracts. And I encourage the authorities to work at full speed to conclude the negotiations with these bidders on the privatization contracts, because many of these shipyards continue to lose money, and the sooner this privatization is terminated, the sooner these companies can take responsibility for getting new orders and for continuing to provide jobs to the workers at the shipyards. You also asked a question with regard to agriculture. Surely, as in many of our member states and in many countries of the world, agriculture is a very important sector in the society, in the economy. So that is also true for Croatia. Croatia, if and when it becomes member of the European Union, will of course be integrated in the common agricultural policy, which will provide, again, funding for the agriculture. Direct subsidies will be provided much more than is the case now, in order to enable them to modernize their production. Rural development will be stimulated. So there as well, I do believe that for the agricultures in this country, the accession to the European Union will be a positive contribution.
Evo, ja vam zahvaljujem na ovim odgovorima i možemo reći Hrvatska se nalazi evo pred referendumom. Kako ocjenjujete kampanju koju provodi vlada sadašnja, kako je provodila bivša vlada i kako ocjenjujete i sudjelovanje delegacije uopće, vaše osobno, koliko se trudite informirati ljude okolo? Ovo je večerašnja emisija i dio prilog.
It is clear that when a country organizes a referendum, the authorities must ensure that the citizens are well informed about the issue at stake. Here we are talking about possibly Croatia becoming member of the European Union. I would argue probably the most important decision the citizens of this country have to take for the foreseeable future. Given that these negotiations have taken a considerable period of time, given that now this process is terminated and all the information is available on the website of the government, on our website, my delegation has always been extremely proactive by informing the citizens. 5-6 years ago, the delegation set up a special information center, which is super active by organizing conferences, by publishing documents. Yesterday we were actually organizing an event with the Minister of Foreign Affairs at which a new book was made known to the public, a book highlighting the benefits and the challenges of Croatia's accession to the European Union. We organize competitions, contests. We have facilitated trainings of young people, of journalists in Brussels, in other places in the European Union. We have a very well-documented website, of which I'm happy to share the details with, which of course the viewers can consult. And I would also call upon the sense of responsibility of each citizen to inform himself or herself, because lots of information these days in our information communication society is readily available. So if they inform themselves properly, I do believe that the citizens of Croatia are ready to cast their vote on Sunday.
Je li odgovornost na vladi? Je li možda kampanja previše elitistička?
I think that what we have seen over the last couple of weeks on television, what we have heard on radio, what we have been able to read in the newspapers, I believe that the campaign is now in full swing and that indeed great efforts from all sides have been made in order to reach all the citizens of the country.
Da, evo rekla sam pred nama je referendum. Što će se dogoditi ako ljudi kažu ne?
Well, first of all, let me repeat that, of course, I hope that the citizens will vote yes and that there will be a strong vote. To ćemo za kraj ostaviti. However, if the vote would be negative, then I believe that it will be important for the government to reflect about the situation, to analyze why the citizens rejected this accession treaty, and to see what can or should be done in the future. There is not one recipe ready, and certainly from the side of the European Union we will respect the decision of the population.
Uglavnom u javnosti je prisutan euroskepticizam koji često dolazi od strane recimo desnih političkih stranaka i koji se poziva na gubitak nacionalnog identiteta i suvereniteta. Možete li to malo pojasniti? Hoće li Hrvatska izgubiti nacionalni identitet i suverenitet? Identitet ostaje, vjerujem, a suverenitet...
Let me state very clearly, I have no problem with citizens who are against the accession of Croatia to the European Union. In other words, I have no problem that people are skeptical or negative about belonging to the European Union. Not that I agree, of course not, but this is normal in any democracy. In any of our member states, we have also part of the population which still now is skeptical vis-à-vis the European Union. I'm aware that some of these Eurosceptici, as they are often called, fear that in this country, Croatia will lose its national identity and sovereignty. I think that this fear is not justified. Why? If we look at the situation in the current 27 member states, have these member states lost their national identity? Have they lost their sovereignty?
No.
The answer is no. And therefore,
No.
there is no reason why this would happen to Croatia. In the European Union, we very strongly favor diversity in many respects, including in the field of culture, for instance, which is also very dear to Croatia. Diversity continues to prevail throughout the European Union, and therefore I would certainly encourage those skeptici to reconsider their views. They should not be afraid.
Ali s druge strane, ljudi promišljaju i recimo nekakve loše gospodarske i socijalne prilike u samoj Europskoj uniji. Posebno stoga što i samo naše gospodarstvo se nalazi u jednom izuzetno teškom stanju. Ja ću vas sada pitati nešto konkretno. Hoće li se ljudi moći zapošljavati u zemljama Europske unije? Hoće li to biti jednostavnije ako uđemo u Europsku uniju?
Well, one of the fundamental principles of the functioning of the European Union, of which also Croatia will be able to benefit upon accession, is the freedom of people to move around, of workers to move around, to get jobs in the other member states, for capital to be circulating, for services to be rendered throughout this single market. But of course, jobs are not guaranteed. Yes, the market will be open, although I must say that, like in previous enlargement processes, it is possible that some of our member states will still be looking for some transition period before freeing completely the labor market. But excuse me, if we look back at the previous processes, that was only a minority of members. So, whereas subject to work permits, of course, the possibilities will be there. Croatian citizens, young or old, who wish to work in other member states must make sure that they are competitive, that they have the proper qualification for which there is demand in the other member states. Jobs will not be offered just like that. It doesn't come automatically.
Hoćemo li se naći možda u situaciji poput građana Italije, Portugala, Irske, koje upravo ovih mjeseci iseljavaju prema Novom Zelandu, Kanadi, Australiji i Brazilu?
Yes, well, clearly, because of the economic recession, as I already indicated, many have lost their jobs, or young people have never been given the opportunity to find jobs. Towards that point, that the governments have to create the environment, have to stimulate growth and employment, but ultimately it will be primarily through companies that job offers will be provided. But it is also important for the unemployed to retrain themselves, to make sure that they do have the right qualifications in order to find their place in indeed what is currently a highly competitive market. We are living in a globalized world. So it is to a large extent up to those people themselves to ensure that they can offer something to possible employers.
Što ulazak u Europsku uniju nudi studentima, recimo i znanstvenicima?
Well, for students and scientists, the European Union will offer access on a basis of non-discrimination. Students and scientists will be able to join academic institutions, if they are admitted, on the basis of objective and non-discriminatory grounds. If in a particular member state grants or scholarships are provided, then they should also be provided on a non-discriminatory basis. And of course, Croatia will be able to take part in a number of programs. Lifelong learning is one of the leitmotifs of the European Union. And of course, Erasmus and Erasmus International, or Erasmus Open to the World, has already been a great benefit to Croatian students.
Evo, Hrvatska, nadamo se, ulazi u Europsku uniju. Međutim, što je sa drugim zemljama u regiji? Je li za njih ostaju otvorena vrata Europske unije?
Very important issue as well. I believe that the possible accession of Croatia to the European Union offers Croatia to become a bridge builder between the current European Union and the other countries of the region, because Croatia has gone through this process of negotiation. And on the basis of my contacts with the political establishment in Croatia, I believe that indeed Croatia has the intention to do so. Now, this can be extremely helpful because the other countries of the southeast of Europe are in different phases of their aspiration towards the European Union. But basically, they have expressed their intention that they would like to become members of the European Union, and the European Union has given indications to these countries that if the conditions are fulfilled, because that's what it is about at the end of the day, they indeed will be welcome. So Croatia can provide a lot of assistance to these countries in order to help them prepare themselves to eventually become members of the European Union. I believe this is important in the interest of these countries, but also for the European Union, because the current European Union wishes that peace and stability in the southeast of Europe is maintained. We do not want to see any wars any longer.
U kolikoj mjeri mislite da bi dvije krizne situacije u regiji, područje Bosne i Hercegovine i područje Kosova, moglo ugroziti mir i stabilnost u regiji?
Of course, we have to look at the reality, and you're right by pointing to a very difficult situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina, to a difficult situation within Kosovo, and let me add, to a difficult relationship between Serbia and Kosovo. The countries have to deal with these situations internally, and Europe is trying to advise these countries how to move forward. But of course, they have to create internally the conditions by agreeing amongst the political parties, the different groups of the society, such as in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Only they themselves can do so. And this is a precondition, of course, before significant further progress in terms of preparation for access to the European Union can be made. And between Kosovo and Serbia, obviously, the relations have to further improve. And this has also been made clear to Serbia last December, when the heads of state and government of our member states indicated that Serbia has to do more work in this area if it wishes to obtain the status of candidate country.
Da, evo, mi smo na kraju emisije. Molim vas samo jednu poruku. Hoćemo li pozvati ljude da izađu na referendum i možda, evo, vi imate neku sugestiju?
Yes, I would very much encourage the citizens to speak up, whether it's yes or no, but at least that they express their views. And I said that the European Union will respect the decisions of the voters in the Republic of Croatia. I think, and I'm convinced, that the accession of Croatia to the European Union is a huge opportunity for the Croatian citizens. They should reflect about a number of the issues we have been talking about today, and they should reflect about all the information which has been made available, which I hope they will have digested by Sunday.
Thank you. Your
Hvala
Excellency.
lijepa. Hvala.
Drage gledateljice, dragi gledatelji, mi smo na kraju još jedne cenzure. Večeras smo sa gospodinom Paulom Vandorenom razgovarali, šefom delegacije Europske unije u Hrvatskoj, razgovarali o prednostima i manama ulaska Hrvatske u Europsku uniju. Nadamo se da smo ovom emisijom i vama pomogli u odluci. Svakako izađite na referendum i glasajte prema svojoj savjesti. Toliko za večeras. Lijep pozdrav i do gledanja. Blah, blah, blah.